Three of our other speakers are from all over the world, but just a couple of minutes ago, the university electricity went down, as probably in very many places in Ukraine, but we can still do our work, and this is what we are trying to do as much as possible in Ukraine. My name is Sofia Opatska, and I will be moderating today's panel discussion. I'm Vice Rector for Strategic Development at the Ukrainian Catholic University, and I would like to say that today we have participants registered from 14 countries, and I would like to name some of them because it's a really global audience we have. So we have participants from United States, from Argentina, Poland, Germany, UK, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Croatia, Israel, India, Kenya, Cameroon, Ukraine, and probably some others, which we just didn't know that people are with us. So welcome, and I hope we will have a very productive discussion in the next hour. Before I present our distinguished guests, I would like to say a couple of words about Ukraine and to make a short introduction as Ukrainian. The invasion of Ukraine is causing a massive humanitarian crisis. After the start of full-scale invasion, Ukrainians can think only in billions and millions. We have millions of internally displaced people and temporary refugees. We have millions of people without housing, electricity, water, and heat. Billions of dollars of destruction in the infrastructure. Honestly, when I was preparing for this event, I even didn't check the new numbers because sometimes they are really, really scary. In a country which was actually not on the top of the list in the welfare, but was considered to be a country which steadily grew in its economy, communities were developing, and principles of freedom were always on the agenda of our people. Unfortunately, now we are living different life. Many countries are providing assistance to Ukraine in immediate response, but also broader discussion about longer-term recovery on the principles of Build Back Better takes place on the level of governments, business associations, universities, NGOs. International experience and international perspective is very, very important to us, as we would like to make this process transparent and up to speed. So today I am very honored to present our guests, and thank you very much from the very beginning that you agreed to join this conversation. I would like to present to you Andrew Fourcault, an American scholar, researcher and educator in the field of experiential education, whose works has focused primarily on advancing research in service learning. We have been talking, prior to this event among us, and I just mentioned that whenever you Google service learning, you see the very distinguished scholarly papers by Andrew Fourcault. So, Andrew, thank you very much for joining us today. And your profile is really nice and big, but I will keep it short so that we spend more time for the discussion. I would like to present to you also Markus Krakebaum, head of EBS. It's a business school in Germany, Center for Business Ethics, and lecturer at this business school. And the main research interests of Markus cover community service learning, research ethics, applied ethics, political philosophy, modern philosophy, continental philosophy, and phenomenology. Very impressive profile, Markus. Thank you very much for being with us. I will just mention that we have been together at one of the conferences recently in Innsbruck, and it was a great pleasure to share experience from Ukraine, but also hear wonderful and interesting experience from Germany. The next speaker is Bojana Chulum-Ilic. She is from Croatia, and welcome, Bojana. Bojana works at the University of Rijeka at the Faculty of Humanities and Social Science, Department of Education. And as well, Bojana's interests and work and expertise is in the topics of engaged university, engaged teaching and learning pedagogy, and youth civic education. I guess every one of us would like to be engaged when we learn. So I'm so grateful for your work, because I hope so many young people will feel this engagement because of your work, and will feel this appreciation in the classroom and what they do and how they do. The last but not least is Father Andriy Shestak, my colleague from Ukrainian Catholic University. Father Andrew is head of and director of School of Journalism and Communication at our university, and actually his team is also streaming this event to everyone in the world, and they are doing really fantastic job if you can see us, even when the electricity is not there in the university. And Father Andrew, his team at the School of Journalism and Communication, they did a lot of projects recently connected to service learning, and I hope you will be also sharing with us your experience. So my dear guests, I would like to mention maybe one more thing before we start with questions, that with the beginning of war, the role of universities in Ukraine became much more than just universities. Sometimes I have feeling that we work in communication agency to the whole world. Sometimes I feel that we work at the humanitarian center, at the logistics center. This is how our university looked like in March, April, and May. And volunteering became a huge part of work, and something important to be done by universities, our students and staff. And it looks like that there is a new mission to the universities right now, and we are reflecting on this mission as well. So maybe I would like to open and start our conversation with asking you the same question. Well, first of all, is this the right time for Ukraine to think about recovery? Because some people might say, well, you didn't win the war yet. You know, you still have to do a lot at the battlefield. You still have to take care of your country, of the independence of your country, and you're already talking about recovery. But also, would you find that service learning can be helpful to us? Should we use it as a tool, as an instrument for the recovery? And maybe we can start in the order in which I presented you. So Andrew, if you would be the first one to start our conversation.
Yeah, it's really an honor to be with you, and our thoughts are with you and all the people of Ukraine these days. You're very heavy on our minds, and we're with you all the way. To answer your question, I would say yes. I think this is the right time for Ukraine to think about recovery. I think it's never too early to plan for, to put in place a thoughtful, aggressive recovery plan and to begin the recovery process. Sophia, you mentioned the millions and the billions of issues that and people who are suffering and are being impacted, and the recovery will take a long time and will require a long-term plan. So I think, especially in light of the breadth and the depth of the challenges that Ukraine is facing, I would say definitely this is the right time to begin that planning process. I think we need to be very strategic in that effort. And regarding as to whether service learning is a good tool in the process, I think it can be. I think it can be if the purposes and intentions behind the service learning efforts consider the complexity of the societal issues that Ukraine is facing. And if the service learning efforts are focused on and based on long-term efforts that focus on collective action rather than these more sporadic, short-term individual projects that are offered here and there. While I think these shorter-term projects, individualized service learning efforts are welcome and can be impactful, I think the kinds of issues that need to be addressed in the recovery plan will require service learning efforts that are very multifaceted, comprehensive, strategic, that are deep, sustained, and that are based on these coalitions that can work together across the sectors to advance the healing and the rebuilding process.
It's a great introduction. I already made some notes. um, thank you. Marcus, what about you? What do you think?
Yes, well, thank you very much, Andrew. From a strategic point, I think you mentioned very important things. I will talk as a practitioner, and as a practitioner, I would say that all my transformative service projects, learning projects, are grounded in experience and cognitive dissonance. And what my students do is they find personal ways to cope with those dissonances. You first see that there's something terribly wrong, and then it should not be this way. And then this may come as a real shock to you, and then you start to you personalize this. You act, you put yourself into service in order to resolve that dissonance, in order to regain a balance for yourself. So I would say serving is also already part of a recovery of a human being. In putting yourself to service. And then the next step is processing. Processing means to rationalize, to make sense of what is all happening here. And this needs a lot of communication, dialogues, reflection. Um, and by doing so, you might find a new sense of belonging. You might find a new sense of what is your culture? Who are you as a human being, as a social being? As a cultural determined being, and then may also find a new sense of whom you want to become in the future, in the sense of to what do you want to serve, or what do you want to worship in your life. So this is a deep process, and war is I think the biggest dissonance you can imagine. And in order to cope with this, you have to become engaged in one way or the other. You have to do something sensible to regain your balance somehow. So by processing these experiences, then is really crucial. And that's what service learning does. And I would really say this is the right time and the right tool for you to do this. Reflecting means to explore these shifts in perspective that you have experienced through various lenses, through professional lenses, but also to the social sciences, psychology, and all these things. So, and the last stage of service learning is connecting in a deeper sense to the issue and to the people. So this is also connecting is already a move towards recovery, and connecting means what can we do in the long range to scale this up to solve the big problems that we face in the country. Mm-hmm. So yes, definitely. Yeah, thank you.
I actually just thought about one example, which one of our graduates from Odessa, she mentioned at a recent event in the business school. She was leading a huge humanitarian center in Odessa. And she was saying that people were bringing about this engagement and new senses and being part of something bigger. And she was saying that people were bringing some small things which maybe this humanitarian center did not need so much, because the scale was much bigger or the needs were different. But the possibility for people to contribute already gave them the sense in life. And it was, in a way, it was two-way movement of two-way exchange, of something which made the sense for both sides so important. So I think this is it goes in line very much about what you have been talking about. Well, Bojana, what would you say? Because we have mentioned about engaging, and you are definitely an expert in this field, and you also come from the country which went through recovery.
Yeah, thank you, first of all, for having me here. It's a real privilege to be here with all of you. I totally agree with, Andrew and Marcus, and I'll try just to build upon a bit, saying that what Andrew said, it's never too early to start a recovery element, because there are going to be a lot of different platforms for the recovery journey. And education is just one of many. And definitely service learning as such can be a very powerful tool. It's not a magic it's not a magical one. It's not a, sort of a wizard tool. It really takes a lot of effort, coming from all of the sides engaged, the university, the academics, researchers, students, different collaborators in the community. But it's a rewarding in so many different levels. And I think that it's very wise to already, integrate it in your long-term plans. And I think that thinking about integrating service learning logic and service learning premises, in both teaching and research might just contribute even more to students better understanding, all of these multifaceted issues that at some point gonna need them to engage as well, because they're gonna be those, holding up, the very upcoming future of the recovery journey and of your country. And I think that service learning really offers a platform for young people to learn how to connect, how to collaborate, how to solve issues together. There is no room for egos here. There is no room for conflict in service learning. Service learning is really about building up something new, something better, something more healthy. Even if we talk about, society and its own recovery. And you are educating, new generations of Ukrainian leaders. And I think it's very important to have that in mind. And those new generations maybe need a new educational journey, and maybe service learning is one of the elements that can contribute to their journey. There are thousands of research done showing that service learning really has a great biographical impact on students. And I think that service learning really can show students how to live, learn, and sort of contribute to the recovery journey in peace.
Uh, you know, I really, I really appreciate that you spoke with a hope, because I think this is what all of us are looking for right now. And when you spoke about students and their future and their opportunities and how it can help, so thank you. So now I would like to ask Father Andrew what's your opinion? Because you are here on the ground, we are fighting for survival, and at the same time we are talking about hope, recovery, and service learning.
Sophia and all of our guests, first of all, thank you also for that you are with us, and all our viewers. Please think about the thing that we are talking about, because the education for us in Ukrainian Catholic University is the main rock of recovery and rebuilding the new Ukraine. And our main message for everyone, that education, the time for education is right. It is right. It's now. You have to be prepared when we win the war and when we will start the process of the recovery of our own country. At this moment, more than 90 educational institutions in Ukraine was totally demolished. They no longer exist, and more than 869 institutions was partly damaged, and they couldn't proceed, at least in this moment, with an educational process. So the main word for us is responsibility, because the educational institution are now going down the numbers and possibilities for the students to take some new advantages and everything else. And 7 million people left the country. So our main response for our future is an education and the social service learning that we really trying to implement in our university is some new proposition for the society, and especially for the academical society, in Ukraine, how we could develop our educational environment and give the new hope for the students and give the new knowledge even during the university period and time, some calm time, I can say, during the war. So this is my response.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, now I would like to ask you, maybe we can go into some examples, because I'm sure it's really good to talk about some examples how through service learning some bigger issues were solved on the local level. You know, sometimes when we talk about, you know, global warming or some other matters which are really huge, you know, this is like something we cannot tackle, or poverty. Everybody thinks, how can I tackle this huge problem? You know, we are saying at the same time in Ukraine that we are small drops in the ocean. So how can we, being small drops in the ocean, how can we help with big global issues? And I would like to ask you to share some examples. And maybe, Bojana, if I can start with you now, since you are the closest one to Ukraine geographically.
Thank you. If it's okay with you, I might just focus more on my own faculty and my own department, because these are the service learning examples that I know the best, although they are scattered across the university and different kind of disciplines and different faculties as well. In the case of Croatia, service learning has also been quite a recent, you know, methodology sort of welcomed at a university level, and still there are not many academics integrating it in their own teaching and teaching and learning. But there are really great examples, and I think that those examples are the ones that are probably promoting the methodology, you know, in a way, and that are inviting new members to the service learning club, you know, to come on board. So for example, one thing that it's quite important for our own department is a collaboration with local authorities, and particularly with the Department of Schooling and Education. And there are a lot of different kind of service learning projects that we do locally based, but in collaboration with that department. And throughout the years, we have really become even, you know, not only successful collaborators, but even a great friends. And there are a lot of different kind of initiatives that got out of that collaboration as well. So, for example, the city where I live, the city of Rijeka, is the first city that has introduced civic education in elementary schools. So for about 2 decades, there have been this, maybe not conflict, but at least non-consensus on a national level. There was not straight national policy related with civic education. And I purposefully picked up that example because it was very important after the war that we start building civic education, and Croatia missed that opportunity. So, you know, 25 years later, after the war, there are still so many unresolved issues within the society. They just keep having the war issues present even so many years after. And this is why I'm talking about this particular example and choosing it as a first one to share with you. So the city of Rijeka at some point just decided that they're gonna actually deconstruct this notion of national power in educational policy. And because cities are founders of elementary schools, they have their own power to bring changes, you know, to the schools. So the city of Rijeka decided to introduce civic education to all elementary schools that city of Rijeka has founded. And they needed a partner as well. So the university stepped in, you know, as sort of a natural partner, a natural friend in that particular journey. And a lot of our students were engaged, year after year after year. So we had this long-term service learning collaboration with the city of Rijeka, and each academic year was dedicated to one part of introducing civic education more systemically in elementary schools. So students were doing research with the kids from elementary schools, with their parents, with different kind of teachers and professional associates that were, interested in being part of the civic education courses and activities. Developing different kind of educational materials, platforms, online, offline, delivering education, professional training for teachers who wanted to be part of civic education in their own schools. So that took also some time, as part of the process, but it was well known. It is still well known as Rijeka's model of civic education, and there have been plenty different local authorities communicating with the city of Rijeka and kind of taking the whole package that the city of Rijeka offers for free, with all the materials, all the guidelines, all publications, everything, for free. And I think this was quite a victory for the bottom-up approach in bringing such an important change within elementary education. And this is probably one that we are most proud of, because we have been partnering with the city of Rijeka for a long time. And even the post, kind of doing different kind of evaluation research, bringing different kind of issues to the city board, bringing different kind of changes following evaluation research and analysis. So that's just one example of how we engaged our students of education into being actually part of creating such an immense change in educational policy and practice at the same time, but on a local level. And that brought a huge hope, like 25 years after, having the issue of civic education becoming alive in elementary schools. There are a lot of different kind of examples that are sort of celebrating collaboration with NGOs, with different kind of civil society organizations in our community. A lot of them are grassroots organizations, and our students are engaged again in different kind of activities. Some of them consists of them doing different kind of research, needs analysis, delivering workshops for elementary schools or high school students. And one of the recent collaborations that it's also going to be a long-term collaboration as well is with a particular organization called Center for the Culture of Dialogue. That is the only organization here seriously dealing with the issue of urban poverty, that it's becoming more and more of an issue in our city. And it seems that nobody likes to talk about it. It's, urban poverty, it's an issue, but I think that we really need to speak about it openly and loudly, because it's becoming part of our city. And I know that it has not been part of the city identity and the city culture before, but now it is. And knowing that there is this one organization that is extremely contributing to the families that are in the risk of poverty, the university really, sort of jump on board quickly in creating all different kind of collaborative projects, some of them, service learning projects. So again, a lot of our students are engaged literally in like face-to-face with, children. I lost the screen from the Ukrainian university. I just want to check. Okay, you're back again. Good to have you back.
Very
I can't.
well. And
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I can see you and I can hear you now. Okay.
good.
Just let me, finish with the sentence that there are a lot of projects now supporting this organization, and university actually taking the responsibility of, being a relevant actor in dealing with different kind of issues that families who are in the risk of poverty. So our students are working one-on-one with, children. Some of them may be supporting, them in their own learning journeys. Some of them are supporting families and family members in, finding new jobs. Some of them are supporting the organizational efforts in different kind of campaigns and lobbying for different kind of, national policies that might actually target urban poverty in a more systemic way. And there are more and more examples that I could talk about for ages, but I kind of wanted to tackle just some of those that you might actually relate more in this particular situation as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, and especially for mentioning this project about urban poverty, because I think it's so much easier just to do like this and not to see anything and not to and turn away and say, well, it's not part of my life, but it does not resolve the issue, it does not solve the problem, and we don't get where we want to be as human beings altogether. Marcus, maybe now I would like to ask you to share. I know about some of your projects. I don't know about which you will talk today, but I'm sure you have some very great examples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Sophia. Yes, we have, like Anja said, a lot of direct service projects also, and I think the advantage of direct service is to get people to think about their privileges or to unlearn their privileges a bit. So if you mentor a child from a family with a poor background, you might become aware of the privilege of having a good education. If you work with food banks, you might become aware of, having enough food. And so it's all about unlearning your privileges and reflecting on this. And we ask them to link sort of the local experience to the global sustainable development goals. So not only to look at the effects of the local food bank, but also to look at what might be failures of the global food production. So trying to link what's happening on the global level to what's happening on the global level. And one interesting project and example I'd like to talk about today is a global partnership project that we are running with the University of Makerere in Kampala, Uganda. This has been running for 2 years now, and we built teams of 6 students from Germany and 6 students from Uganda to work on a common purpose. And there's a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring going on between the students. There's a lot of support for the help organizations that, want to do something. So this year we have the issues of water. We are installing a water filter system in a refugee camp. We have the issue of reforestation. So we plant trees together with schools and set up school partnerships between Germany and Uganda. And we have the issue of education. We are rebuilding a school down there. So, or the students are engaged in this, and this is something I would like to ask, I would like to put into the discussion. I think what Ukraine students really need also is a peer-to-peer contact to students from Canada, from the States, from Europe, and to work on common problems. And for us as European students, or as Canadian students, or even faculty members, it's important to understand your situation right now, to be in communication with you. So I think this is a very nice idea to set up a call for, international service learning corps, and to build a global partnership program. So to hook up universities on this issue together in service learning projects. Yes, that would be my proposal and example. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I totally agree. Sometimes I think that we Ukrainians, we become so much focused on ourselves for different reasons right now, but we still need to remember that we are part of a much bigger world. At the same time, we remember that we are at the front line of the whole world, but still connecting with others, it will give us 2 opportunities. One, to share what we are going through, but also not to forget that there are many other countries which are going through other difficult situations, and being together, it will help us. It will heal us as well.
Students work together means they also become ambassadors, and they become, advocates for this cause, because they hook up to it, they can connect to it. This is important to open up spaces for connecting. Yes.
Thank you. Andrew, you for sure can bring some global perspective to us even more. What would be your, I don't know, examples, suggestions, how we can how we can deal with global problems at the local level?
No, that's a great question. I really appreciated Bojana and Marcus's examples. I think, Bojana brought up this issue of systemic approaches, and I think that that's one of the things that this kind of recovery is going to require. But I would say one of the key features of service learning that makes it, I think, a prime tool, a strategy for addressing and tackling global issues is that service learning brings to the fore our common humanity. It's so many instances, students who engage in service learning enter communities that are different from their own, and they encounter these societal issues that may seem very foreign to them. And this gets to the issue that Marcus mentioned about humanity and dissonance that individuals and students face when doing this kind of work. I think about the students who work with homeless, for example, or unhoused individuals who might have a particular preconceived notion of a homeless person, a picture in their mind, and who initially do not see any connection between the homeless people and themselves. Like you mentioned, Sophia, we kind of walk by them and not really connect with them, not our problem. But then, after engaging with members of the homeless community, students start to realize that these homeless individuals are really no different than themselves. And in turn, they stop seeing the homeless as other people. And they start to see more of themselves in the homeless persons. And students start to learn more about the homeless people's stories and their lives. They start to see a lot of commonalities. And I think it's this sense of our common humanity that service learning lifts up and exposes. And I think that this is the power of service learning, in the sense that of bringing us all together, as was mentioned. Although we may actually be very different and very physically far apart, but the sense of service learning can bring us together. We think about this work as something that people who are empowered do, and people with resources do, or perhaps are very privileged who do, and that is true, that happens. But I think about an experience from a number of years ago, a 10-year-old students in the United States, who's part of their social studies curriculum, they were studying slavery in the United States, learned about how warlords in Sudan tried to extort money from residents. And when the residents can't pay the warlords kidnap the residents' children and force the children into slavery. And these 10-year-old students wanted to do something about it, very far away from the Sudan. And they started to ask questions, asking the teacher, well, can the parents ever get their children back? And even with 10-year-olds, there is a sense of this common humanity. The students really cared about these children. And the students started to say, well, what can we do? Many of them had never even heard of the Sudan. Many of them didn't even know where it was. So the students said that the only way to get their children back to their parents was for the parents to pay the warlords. Of course, the parents don't have the money. So the students started to ask, well, how much would it cost to buy back a child? And they learned that the cost was about $50 US. So the students decided to put together a service learning experience to raise money to buy back these enslaved children. They connected with these international organizations. They raised money. They connected the work to what they were studying in the class. They eventually raised $50,000 US. enough to free 1,000 children from slavery. And they were able to get many children back to their parents. So yes, service learning, local service learning can address global issues. We also saw it when Mr. George Floyd was killed 2 years ago by a police officer who placed a knee on Mr. Floyd's neck and killed him. This tragedy, which took place just a couple of kilometers from my university, captured international attention, and perhaps you heard about it as well. It really brought outrage to so many who felt the injustice, who felt the pain, the hurt that Mr. Floyd and the community he represented had endured. Again, the sense of common humanity really was exposed, comes to the fore. And I think many of us feel a sense of common humanity with what is happening in Ukraine. We may not necessarily have relatives or friends in Ukraine or colleagues in Ukraine, but we see the injustice, the pain, we feel the suffering. And because we sense that common humanity, we naturally want to take action. We want to do something that makes the situation better, something that can bring peace and justice, healing to the people and the communities that are suffering. But the one caveat I think I'd like to offer around how we approach this that we should consider is that we really have to be careful to not engage in service learning in ways that are impulsive. And what I mean by that is that we must be thoughtful, we must be strategic, planful in the actions that we take in service learning. And so, for example, when Mr. Floyd was killed not far from our university, of course, our university wanted to do all these service learning projects, these activities to work with the community, with Mr. Floyd's family, with the neighborhood, to really address and improve the plight of marginalized persons of color in our communities who were subjected to a lot of police brutality. However, the community stopped us and they said, wait, we are still healing. We are not ready for an influx of students and professors to come in and begin to implement these various activities that solve the challenges that we as a community of color have been facing for a long time when it comes to our relationship with the police. And so we need time to process what's happened. We need to reflect on this. We need to heal. And something that one community member said that really stuck with me was when he said, wait to be invited in before stepping up. So this is just a cautionary note for us that want to get involved and want to do service learning. I think service learning can be very powerful. It can make a difference. But in order to make a difference, I think it's important that if we are to engage in service learning in addressing a local or global issue of any kind, that we first must ensure the community wants us there, that the community feels ready to have service learners there to address these issues. Because without that readiness on the part of the community, service learners can actually get in the way of the community's healing and recovery. And so I just share this cautionary tale as something we need to keep in mind as we think about how we as outsiders engage in these service learning activities in various communities.
Thank you. Thank you for great stories and great stories to learn from. Well, I would like to ask now Father Andrew, because you had a lot of various projects in last semester and we didn't have much time to think about them. The need for these projects and the request from the society was so huge that maybe it was not really according to the guiding principles of service learning, but still you have been doing a lot. And I would like to combine my question with a question from one of the participants from Candelaria from Buenos Aires. She asked in the registration form, how have you combined service and learning in these war times? Is there a specific new type of service learning in these events? What reflection process have you developed in relation to it? Was there a specific reflection related to spirituality? So just please share some of your experience.
Yeah, thank you very much for our colleagues, because your story really inspired me, like your story and your work. And we are very young in social service learning, so more or less like 300 students from our university take part in some of the project or in courses with the elements of social service learning. And we have only like 32 courses, and our plan, at least for this year, is 44 for all university, and for 2 master programs in journalism and communication that I'm leading on them. So we want to have like at least 10 integrated in our curriculum. And from the beginning of the war, like we have some kind of emotion from the part of the students and teachers that we want to do something. So the majority goes to do the volunteer work and stuff. Some of our professors or students go as soldiers to the war, but the majority enter properly into the volunteer work to collect the thing, to collect the humanitarian help, and make the logistic. And in some I don't know, maybe the second week of the war, I said to all my students, we have to do what we are the best in communication, in journalism, in information. And we create like at least 8 projects that was related with an information. So the supporting and coordinating more than 120 journalists, and we integrate it into the security for the journalism, integrated it how we as a young journalist and communicator could support the community and inform them in very straight, fast, and also clear way. With the support of university, we also created the pool of the information for different academical environment on the West or United States. So it was maybe after the 3rd month it was a little bit annoying to receive every day the email with verified news and everything from Ukrainian Catholic University, but still we want to share really verified info. And like our faculty of the health, they create the shelter for the refugees, and more than 50 students were learning and working really with the people who are in need, and 80 people and also orphans was living there, and the students was giving them also the professional psychological help with another students of the psychology who create the center for the psychological help and support. And more than like more or less like 300 students was involved in this project to spread the information, to give the help. All the teachers on this faculty was also engaged really to give the help through the telephone, private connection, and speak. So really like all the university transform in some way into like laboratory in very fast social service learning form. And we, as Sophia mentioned, we did also the project that was not so straight correlated with this model. So we also, for my students, I saw that they have some issues. The majority of them are from the center or east part of Ukraine, so their families are in difficulty, and we were trying also to transport the families into the university and give at least for some days or months the housing in our students' homes. And they need to reflect what they need to do. So we create some kind of text and visual project and call it the prayer of the resilience. So my students, they create the visualization of different emotion and problem that they are going through, and some of them create like self-reflecting text, like in the form of the prayer to the God or someone to express the emotion, and we did it like in Ukrainian and also spread through our colleagues to show the resilience and courage and also openness that every one of us have this kind of problem in this period of time. And I want to just to the end that very fast, maybe not only in academical way, but our alumni also launch with some of our teachers and students launch the project Pause to Stop the War, and they create like short messages. The platform, online platform, created totally like in 1 week. It was like something terrific, without no money, nothing, just with this energy of creating something important. They create short messages for the social media in 47 languages, what is going on in Ukraine. And also they took some of our visualization and some developed visualization on other platform like the memes, because the meme now it's one of the most powerful informational thing to spread in social environment, social media environment, and they were created properly, the memes, and putting on this platform and proposed this kind of short messages and visualization to all journalists and all people who want to know what is going on here and what does it mean war for us. So this is the model, like for me, like Ukrainian Catholic University, like feel some kind of emotion, what does it mean? And now when we have almost like nine months of the war, and we maybe sometimes are tired from that, and we have to establish the really the good model and implement in right way in our educational process, and like your help, your story, your experience for us is just the gold. So I'm very grateful that you are supporting us with these new ideas. Like we can really create the international community of social service learning and develop something new. So thank you.
So if I may ask you, because this is the last question with which I would like to wrap up our discussion, and I will maybe phrase it a little bit differently to you and to our guests. What did your students learn from the experience? Did they learn anything except for professional things?
Yeah, I think that the leadership, first of all, and also how the community and the team is important, not only for the professional, like doing stuff, but first of all to support you if you don't have power to move on. So like I saw how at least those students who are working with me entered into our school, and like the war had to separate them for each individual who need to think about their families, who need to think about themselves. And thanks to this common work and learning, they create really the teams. And now I feel the real support from the students, you know, as like you can do everything in one in one word, in one way, like very fast, and I will miss them when they will become an alumni. So the leadership and the importance of the creating of the team and this like rats of the communicational rats. So this is my experience.
Okay, I think this is because they have been doing something very meaningful. Yes.
Yes.
So I would like to rephrase a little bit differently the question to you, my dear friends from Croatia, Germany, and United States. What do you think, what attitudes and capabilities we should develop in our students which should help the recovery of Ukraine? And of course, how service learning can help us with it? Who would like to start? I will give you the option of choosing. Who would like to start? Andrew?
I'm happy to. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Father Andrew, as well, for your inspiring story. It's amazing, despite all that's happening, the resilience and the fortitude to build these coalitions and to connect and to really empower young people to make a difference is really very, very inspiring. To answer your question, Sophia, I would just quickly say a couple, three things. One is, I think, in terms of what capabilities and attitudes, is really to encourage the students in our classes to engage their thoughts and feelings about what is happening in Ukraine. We tend to be very academic in our courses, but I think really giving them the space, the opportunities to make it okay for them to share their understandings of these societal issues, and to get back to what I mentioned earlier about the sense of a common humanity. I think once students can express their feelings, understand their connections with others whom they may not be connected with, be able to express that common humanity. I think that is really at the core of what service learning does, and it's not just the activity. It doesn't just become an activity or an assignment for the class, a project for the class, but something that is really meaningful, as you mentioned, Sophia, that they can engage in this creative. I think that just opens up their possibilities for creative thinking, for ideation of ways and out of the box thinking of how to engage in activities to make a real difference. I think about those young kids who address that issue in the Sudan, and just the sense that their sense of humanity really inspired them to really think beyond what might have been otherwise possible. I think the second thing, another thing is to understand the true impact. I would say, true impact happens over time, and that whatever efforts students would like to enact through service learning really need to be part of this longer term plan. The more that they're connected to this longer term vision, connected with other things that are happening, that they're not necessarily these isolated efforts, like Father Andrew was mentioning, all of these, the way that these things were starting to get more connected. I think it gives students a sense of seeing that they're part of a larger cause, and they're part of this larger effort, that they really can make a difference. Sometimes when these projects and these initiatives are very sort of prescribed and very small in scale, the students don't necessarily see the meaningfulness behind it or the potential effects. And so connecting to these larger efforts, I think, is important. And lastly, I would just say that that major societal issues are inherently complex and multi-layered, and that as part of the service learning experience, we have to build this understanding of all the different layers. And one of the effective practices in service learning is to reflect on all the different aspects of this, to really think about the societal issues. It's not just about doing the service, but it's about unpacking that societal issues, thinking about the political, the economic, the religious, the cultural, the societal aspects, the contextual aspects of why these things are happening. Why do we have these issues? And that becomes a powerful piece of service learning. And that becomes where we deepen that understanding, that it's not just the activities, but it's the understanding of how we address these societal issues that ultimately can help us then not repeat history, hopefully, in the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Bojana, I can see you would like to say.
Yeah, because it seems that I just want to lean on what Andrew said really nicely. It was just recently at the Rome symposium of the Uniservitate project that we were discussing the same issue, and we place it through a discussion in such a nice framework that I like to share with you. We called it, I mean, at the workshop, it's not like we, we're debating, discussing with a large audience about it, but I think it's a really nice framework to share. We called it the 4 C's. So first, we need to make them care about others and care about the societal issues. So the first C is caring. The second C is connecting. And it has a lot to do with what Andrew just said. The contemporary societal issues are becoming more and more complex, and they need to connect, with others, so to be able to even think about addressing a certain issue. The third C is compassion. To be the caring, brings the understanding about the issue. So it targets more of the cognitive dimension. But then when you connect and when you're compassionate about, then that brings more in front this emotional dimension. But then what's really important is to actually act upon it. So to bring on this behavioral dimension, and that's the 4 C's: to commit yourself. So commitment. So caring, connecting, compassionate, and commitment. So these 4 C's really seem to kind of embrace this notion of service learning and kind of, the answer to a question, what should we, what kind of attitudes, what kind of, knowledge, capabilities should we teach our students? And I mean, I think that we're just giving them an opportunities to have their own learning journey and their own learning experiences, and the learning, just comes along the way. But I think that these 4 C's really embrace this whole issue, so we have to think and reflect about it. We have to understand. Then we can actually feel others, worries, others' pain, others' suffering. But then we need to act upon it. And that's also related with this evergreen question of what kind of citizens do democracy need? And there is a first level, all of us want to have a good neighbor, right? A nice neighbor, a neighbor that's gonna, obey the laws and different kind of policies. But is that enough? Mm-mm. All of us want a nice neighbor, with whom you can talk and maybe even engage in a local volunteering club. And that's brilliant. That's very nice, very compassionate to engage in volunteering activities. But is that enough? No. What we want are those citizens who are nice, who gonna engage in volunteering activities, but who's gonna question why the volunteering activity is even necessary. So it's not about volunteering with homeless forever and ever. It's about questioning, why do we have homeless people in this city? Why do we have children that are, labeled as part of the urban poverty phenomenon? And this is what service learning, I think, needs to strive to create those kind of critical citizens who are not going to be afraid to question the status quo.
Thank you. I can see that Marcus really wants to add something. You're more than welcome, Marcus.
Yes, I think very nice. We agree to all my fellows. This is really what has to be done. But I think also for me, it's like a bit, walking in a river without seeing where you trip on, because service learning is a risky business in a way, and you need to constantly check whether you're on the right track. So it has a lot to do with what is called design-based research or design-based teaching. it's iteratively. You go back to the NGO and they say, no, we want something completely different. So you have to change the plan, you know. And you are a master, I think. You Ukrainians are now master in managing uncertainty, and that's what is really the central, I think, the central skill for you. And to lead your students to these times of uncertainty, and that takes some inner compass and compassion, of course, you know, very important. Connecting respect, first of all, respect to what is there and to the needs of the state, of the people. Yes. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much. I don't know how our participants, but I made a lot of notes. And what really is important that you have been talking about this as an opportunity for strategic longer term results of some bigger issues, because I think we understand, and what sometimes scares us, honestly, it scares me as a citizen of Ukraine, that our problems and our issues are so big that sometimes we don't know where to start. How should we start? Where we should start? Of course, we know where we are right now, and we know our shorter term plans and, you know, what we want to achieve. But then the new level, the new layer of problems will start to become, you know, more vivid. And obviously we want to deal with them. We want to solve those issues. And if service learning can help us with the longer term, if we put it really strategically and in a more sustainable way, then we definitely can be starting right now, and we definitely can be using it, because then it's not a sporadic solving of the problem. It's not a short-term thing, but something what should be in the long-term focus of the country. And we as university can help, because for us, and I'm sure for other universities, the question is, how can we help our country right now, except for being in educational business, which is very much about business of the mindsets of our students, of their attitudes, and of what they do, how they do it, and how good they are, not only as professionals, but as human beings. And this is what we often tell to our students. We want you to become not only great professionals, we want you to become better human beings. And I really like this common humanity notion that keeping this in mind, we can achieve much more, and in much more sustainable way. Well, it was a great pleasure to have this discussion with you. I'm sure many of our participants enjoyed it right now or while watching it later. It will be on the YouTube channel of the Ukrainian Catholic University. Please think about us, please pray for us, please help us in various very concrete projects. And I think we should not leave the idea of international network of projects connected to Ukraine. We would really appreciate that. Thank you, Father Andrew, thank you, Bojana, thank you, Marcus, and thank you, Andrew. It was a great pleasure to have this discussion with you. Thank you.